Welcome to Field Foley episode 10. Our guest today is Katrine Amsler, a Danish musician, composer, producer, and sound artist. With an impressive background in interactive audio, sound design, and composition for films, commercials, video games, and more, Katrine's talent and versatility shine through in her work. She has contributed to renowned projects like Control and Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, and is currently working as a sound designer on the highly anticipated project 007. With a passion for exploring the textures and structures of sound, Katrine's compositions and soundscapes capture the essence of her diverse musical influences. So, hello, Katrine, and thanks for taking the time.
Hello. What a nice intro. Is that really me?
I hope I got everything right. I was really impressed with your work so far, and I've been checking into your music the last couple of days. And one thing that instantly stood out to me was your vast collection of self-made instruments. So
yeah.
I'd really like to know what started your interest in building your own instruments.
I think it's that's interesting because my own instruments are something that a lot of people think are super interesting. But actually, when I started out doing them, it was just something I did for myself because I think the first one I made was when I was pregnant with my first child, my oldest daughter, and I was like, walking around like I needed something to do, so I started building, just experimenting with building stuff, and found it super funny. Yeah, I think that was the first one I made. And I mean, when I was growing up as a kid, my main dream was to become an inventor. That was the job that I thought I would like to have, because I was always like building stuff out of different things. I grew up in the countryside, so I would just find different materials and stuff and build from that. So I guess it comes from my childhood as an inventor.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I instantly feel connected to you, because that's also what I said to my mom. But like, I think 8 years old or something, she asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I want to be an inventor.
That's funny.
Yeah, because it opens up so many possibilities. You can invent anything. So
yeah, it's a great job, you know.
Yeah, and it's also, I feel like it's the first like real thought I had about me not being one thing, like not being just this one person that does just making chairs or I don't know, working in an office for exact this purpose, but this interest in exploring different things and always exploring different things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so nowadays when you build an instrument, a new one, do you have like a goal in mind when you build the instrument, or do you just like see what kind of sounds you get from experimentation and then think like, oh, that's awesome, I can use that for X, Y?
Hold on, my cat is being... I just have to... I'm sorry.
Cat eruption, not a problem.
Yes, 2 seconds. It's like whenever there's a door locked, he's being noisy.
They always have to be at the exact door that's locked, of course.
Yeah, when I the instruments... Actually, I'm really bad at working after a plan. So... if I realized that both with my music and with the instruments I build, that if I have a goal or idea that I'm going to make it like this, then it's bound to fail, because it's always kind of going in a different direction that I had in mind. So I kind of learned to embrace that So when I build, I have no idea what it's going to end up with. I kind of just slowly connect different things and try to put them together and ask myself the question, okay, this is what it looks like now. What would happen if I do this? And then it turns into different weird things. And I think I really like working intuitively, because that's when the best results come up for me, at least. And I think that's how I approach both my music and also the instruments I build. Try to follow what it wants to become, I guess.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that, especially with that having a plan and then not turning it out. And I think, we also talked on this podcast, I think a couple of times already about going with the flow, and if something goes wrong, just roll with it and see where it leads you.
Yeah.
Because that's the best advice, I think, especially for artistic jobs or artistic endeavors. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem with having a plan is that you can only plan what's already in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not opening any doors. So if you don't have a plan and you make mistakes, that will sometimes take you in directions you weren't thinking of. So that's why I like so much about when I do things and make things, then I try as much as I can not to think about the result, because in the minute I think about a result, it's limited my choices, I think.
Yeah.
But it's difficult.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at some point you have to get something done, something specific. So
yeah,
that's where it gets interesting. But yeah, but I think that's also a good point to start with the whole sound design stuff. So one question I always like to ask is, why did you record your first sound and what was it? So your start with recording especially.
Yeah, I think there are several different situations that I remember. One of them was I was working in a restaurant outside New York, I think in the end of the 90s or something. And on my free weekends, I would go into New York, into the city. And there was one situation where I remember taking a cab and finding a dictaphone in the back seat. And I think it must have belonged to a psychiatrist, because I listened a little bit to it and there was a quite deep conversation on the tape. And since I'm super curious, I struggled with that, because it was just too private for me to listen to, but I was also curious. So I had the idea that I have to record something over this tape as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'm gonna listen to their conversation. So I went out and just recorded random stuff in the city and also in the island where I worked. So I deleted the tape or what was on the tape pretty fast, and that was kind of the first time. And then I also remember being a musician. I remember playing a outdoors concert in Sweden, and during the concert there were suddenly 3 seagulls that were circling around for quite a long time, and they just make the most spectacular sounds. And I remember how I just totally lost focus from what I was supposed to do. I was playing a concert for people and just sat listening to them. And the seagulls, I didn't record them, but I kind of recorded them in my system. And that was, I just remember that one. And I think, but the first time I recorded something with a handheld, that was here in Denmark. There's a city near the harbor, and there was a bridge that just had the most wonderful creaks. And it had like pipes underneath that were holding the wood together. And then I managed to put the mic into one of the pipes, and the wind blew through the pipes like an organ, kind of. So it was a combination with those weird organ sounds and the creaks from the wood. And I would just listen to that. I was sat there for hours, I think. That was the first time where I was like, I need to do this, like, all the time.
That sounds amazing. That's also something that I quickly learned, because in the beginning I was always a bit disappointed when I went out, and then it was very windy and I didn't have a good windscreen yet, and just like a normal recorder. But I quickly learned that especially like pipes or other surfaces that resonate in the wind are so much fun to record, and then you get this very unique thing, because it's like this place, just like you said, like this bridge sounds like just this bridge. And you can get sounds that are very unique to that time and place. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Then you decided to do more of that, and how did that evolve? And then you just decided to just do more recording and use that in your music.
Yeah, I think I've used it in my music just because I felt that it had a place there. I think when I'm with my music, I was lagging sometimes elements with structure and things that were unpredictable. Because the piano I'm originally educated as a piano player, and the piano is so predictable. And it has such a long history, and there's so many people playing the piano. So it was kind of, I couldn't find the keys, the tones, that what happens when you press. It wasn't surprising me, which was annoying. And I think that's why I started adding recorded sounds to my music, because it had this element of, it surprised me. And it took away the focus from me a little bit. If you are a musician and a performer, the focus is very much on you. But what I realized when I recorded stuff and added that to my music, it took away the focus from me and put more focus on what I think is important, which is the music and the sounds. And I liked that transition from going away from being a performer and putting the focus on the music instead.
Yeah, I can understand that. Maybe connecting to that question, because I've listened to your album Las La Faria, if I pronounced it correctly.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. So far I only listened to it once, but I feel like I'm gonna have to listen to it a couple more times to like really get everything in, because there's so much stuff in there, and so many ideas and so many twists and turns.
Yeah.
So I'd really wanted to ask you, why did you want to create it? What drove you to do like this album and this kind of album?
Yeah, this is a bit of a special album, because Las La Faria is an orchestra that my mom and dad used to play in. My dad is from Switzerland, and they have this genre called Gugemusik that they play during carnivals. And it's basically like big orchestra with people playing horns and drums. And some people were trained players, but other people never played an instrument before. And they would just play primarily folk songs really loud in unison and go from bar to bar, go down with a 20, 30 people big orchestra and play until they would give them a free beer. So that's the history of Las Lafaria, and they made a one record, and I remember that record. I was listening to that a lot as a kid, and it was just music I'd never heard before. I mean, we had the Beatles and all these kind of records, but then we had this Las Lafaria record, and I would listen to it and just think, wow, this is so powerful. It was like listening. It was as if, American football, if that was audio. That was what I remember that it sounded like. And I just remember thinking of how nice it was to give all this focus to stuff that was not perfect. And for Las Lafaria, I wanted to kind of transform that into a record where I would put instruments that are not popular, like a MIDI flute or a kazoo or things like that, and just put them on a pedestal and try to make an album where I would give attention to sounds and instruments that are not like a nice concerto violin or something. So that was the idea with that record, kind of. And I'm just like, I haven't listened to it for a few years, and then recently I listened back to it, and I was just surprised of how diverse it is. It's like all over the place, which is so kind of funny.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also, I mean, I also read up on the history, so that's why I asked that, because I wanted to share it with the listeners. And also, what really stuck out to me, and I'm going to quote a bit here, was that you talked about this being a manifestation of the power of imperfection and an illumination of respect shown to things that might at first seem unimportant or silly, but giving them attention become important and genuine. And that's something that really resonated with me because, yeah, working in sound, I also started wanting to make music initially, and I never learned any instrument or anything. And I never could get into this kind of learning the theory and learning anything about it or learning an instrument either. But then I started doing like a 12-month program trying to learn to mix and master because I was interested in the technique. And while doing that, I realized what I really liked was sounds and interesting sounds, and also sounds that people might just glance over but for me, there was like something in there. And if you, just like you said, if you put them on a pedestal and give them like a bigger audience, they might be more important than people think.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Yeah, and also that last sentence that I'd like to quote in full is, Las Lafaria reminds me that anyone and anything can make a valuable contribution at any time, and that's incredibly reassuring to me. So I hope this is reassuring to other people as well, because I feel like oftentimes, especially if you do something like we just talked about, following an instinct or following not a preconceived idea, but looking where something goes, you might get in your mind the idea of not really contributing something interesting or not really doing something of value, because that's not, most of the time, that's not what we see. Most of the time is like it's a predefined job or it's a predefined skill. And yeah, this really interesting kind of following your feelings, I think it should be very, very obvious to everyone, hopefully in the future, that that's also a very important contribution and a good skill to have, to just following that.
Yeah.
And not losing confidence in yourself. So
yeah, absolutely. And keeping like the playfulness.
Yes.
That's something that I've thought about a lot. Like I've been to 1,000 schools and went to the conservatory. And I spent many years trying to be something that other people think was the right way to be a musician and a composer. And I think what I always come back to, and when I do my job in the best possible way, that's when I use methods that I used when I was a kid and trying to be an inventor. Just experimenting with stuff and not being afraid of something going wrong or making mistakes. I think we have a society that is very fixed on results and that we deliver, which is important in some cases. But when doing creative stuff, then I feel that it's just super important to not be afraid of doing something that will possibly fail.
Yeah.
Because it takes you into directions that are just interesting.
Yeah.
I remember doing a project with two other composers where we had to make like 100 compositions each in 1 month, and they shouldn't be long. I mean, it could be 5-minute compositions or 1 second.
Okay.
So a lot of it were just sounds, but we had to do it quite quickly. And what we did was that some of those elements that we made would be really bad, but that was okay.
Yeah.
So we made a system where we graded what we had made. So it was a scale from 0 to 5. So if we made something that we didn't like ourselves, we could just give it a 0 or a 1, and it would indicate I made this. I think it was crap, but it can stay because we made a system where they would transist in different ways and morph into each other. And maybe one of my elements that I thought was crap would be perfect with another composer's element that was also crap. So it was just an experiment, and that really opened a lot of doors for me to do things in different ways, which was interesting.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, to summarize that all, we can probably say you can't do anything wrong if no one knows what you're doing.
Yeah.
I really like that. I saw this as a meme at some point.
Cool.
Like way back. And I found it funny then, but just like a short, quick laugh. But now it's really become somewhat of a motto.
Yeah.
Because, that helps a bit going over the anxiety of, as you say, of the pressure of not being able to deliver something or deliver something specific. So, also the point you said, absolutely right. Like, even if you think something is shitty, we also thought about that or talked about that. I think either here on the podcast or in the talk I had with a friend of mine, that if you record something that's really, really bad, there will always be a use for it. We had the example of recording a band that plays absolutely the worst version you can imagine of a song, and it really botches the song, and maybe even the PA system sounds bad.
Yeah.
But then you have a genuine recording of a bad performance, and getting that, if you need that, is very hard, because then you would have to find a band that's really, really shitty and ask them to record them. So everything you may think it's a bad recording or it's a bad performance you did. It can be used in some context in some way, or as a starting point for something else.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Staying a bit more on the album, can you tell us a bit more about how you recorded the album? Have you done like any interesting recording techniques? I mean, I know you build your own instruments, you have this, but especially on the side of recording, did you use some special microphones, for example, or cheap ones, or to get something?
Yeah, I mean, I own 2 microphones, and one of them is not even mine. I'm just borrow it for a lifetime. I think.
It lives at your house now. Okay, I see.
And it's a geophone that I was lucky enough to get. The unicorn microphone that's impossible to buy, but I managed to get that one a few years ago, and then I used it's called Erlon. It's a Swedish guy who makes microphones, and it has like a triangular membrane. Membrane is it called? Yeah. And it's really, really nice microphone. And those 2 together just works. I mean, the geophone takes the lower register, and the Erlen takes up the really nicely in the higher register. And then I just blend that together, and that's been working for almost all of my recordings in a long time. And then if I go out and record, depending on if it's outside or if it's in a room or then I have a handheld and add some mics to that. But the geophone is always with me.
Yeah, absolutely the same for me. I'm lucky enough to also have one.
Yeah.
I've been a fan of the Lom audio phones for a long time, and I got it when it first came out, and it was like the first batch, and I found it interesting. And now I see I'm lucky that I got it so early because people are lining up. But also, this is also a tip I give everyone that asks me, if you want some of those Lom audio phones, they have a really nice newsletter. So if you subscribe to that, you get a date and time when something goes for sale. So you usually can snag one if you're fast enough. So they're really nice people. I remember that I think I placed the wrong order or something, and I contacted them, and they made me an extra batch for the UZ Pros, I think.
Oh, nice.
Which was so awesome. Shout out to Lom Audio. Awesome company. Awesome people.
Definitely.
And what I also really like is their electromagnetic stuff, the Prezo. Don't know how it's spelled, but this one is also amazing for just if you're out and about and recording just the static in the air. If you're near a power plant, for example, or big power lines, something like that. That's very interesting. Electric cars also, I can really recommend recording those. Many different sounds there.
Yeah, cool.
So going a bit further from the album away to like a more general question would be, do you prefer more to work on like linear media like music or dynamic stuff like video games, or is it just you don't have any preference at all?
I mean, I recently started working for IO Interactive, so interactive music is new for me in the sense of implementing and stuff, and it's super interesting. I'm just blown away every day of all the possibilities of that. So at the moment, it's definitely interactive music that I'm interested in. It's just awesome, and I've been working mostly on games anyway. So I think at the moment that's what I'm tripping over.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that. I mean, especially the whole thing of dynamic mixing, or also like dynamic, like you said, dynamic music or sound.
Yeah.
Where you can really not tell 100% what it's going to sound like in game, and for every player it will be a bit different because, it's a random chance in there and some like parameters that have to be considered while playing the sound. So that's also for me. It's also like the thing that really interests me, making some more organic things or that feel more organic.
Yeah.
And I saw that you were credited on Control, and that's, I must say, one of my absolute favorite games.
Yeah.
Especially because of the sound and music. And I saw your role spelled as a sound artist. So can you quickly maybe describe what exactly is the role of a sound artist?
Yeah, I think since 2015 or something, I've been working project-based for game composer Martin Stig Andersen. And what I've been doing for him is what we ended up calling sound artist. And I think what that is that when you invent sounds that he then uses to compose with. So most of the things I've been doing for Martin has been with the instruments that I build, and we've been recording them and tweaking them, and then he's worked with those recordings in his composing.
That sounds like a dream job. So,
it is.
Can you maybe talk a bit more about your experience working on Control? I would really like to. What interests me is what kind of prompts did you get, and what were your responsibilities, and how much freedom did you have to make those tasks that you got?
Yeah, I mean, working with Martin in general, at least I got all the freedom I could get. I mean, he was relying on my intuitive approaches and was just curious to see what I would come up with. So that was just awesome. I mean, and so the process was often that I would either record things at home in my studio, or we would meet up and do recording sessions with the different props and instruments.
Just what interests me is, did you have like some kind of prompt, like some kind of scene in mind, or did you get like the rough outline of the story and then just created a whole bunch of stuff? That would really interest me how this like got created, because in the end, I mean, it's an amazing soundtrack and soundscape, the whole game. It feels like purposefully made for this experience, but also, I mean, if you know a little bit about sound, just like you said, you can hear that there must be a lot of experimenting there and a lot of just exploring, because the story in this world is so deep and so like strange and otherworldly.
Yeah, there's kind of a funny story with that game, that I was at the time that Martin was working on that one. He had his studio in a place here in Copenhagen called Nordhavn, where there's just a lot of construction work going on. And I went out there to get the brief. And most often when I've been briefed, I haven't played the game or seen the game. I've seen concept art. And we've just talked about the essence of the game. And I remember that day we ended up talking a lot about constructions and what is it called? Like beton, you know?
Concrete, yeah.
Concrete, yes. We ended up talking a lot about concrete. And on my way home, I was super inspired, and I ended up trespassing on one of the the construction areas because I felt that I had to pick up some concrete just to take home and see what I could make of it. So that was kind of me walking home from the brief with a big piece of concrete in my backpack. Coming home and just discovering that there was actually no sound coming from that one, but it was kind of funny. I think that's mostly the way we've been working, just talking about different ideas and seeing some concept art. But most of the games when I've worked on with him, I haven't had too much information about it, which was actually quite nice, because it doesn't limit your ideas.
Yeah, that's going back to the point you said, like in the beginning, like this opening up and this not really focusing on anything in special. So
yeah,
but more like more like a rough idea, a feeling, or some direction to go, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it's also good if you're getting on a project in the stages of concept art. And I mean, for most games, what I hear from other developers as well is that for 90% of the time you have like something that doesn't really work, and then there's this magic moment that at one point like the build works and it's just a game.
Yeah.
It feels like a game, but it's a really hard track for years to get to that point, because especially for new developers, I heard it's really, really disheartening, because you make something and you just have this broken, tacky thing that isn't a game at all, and everyone has like to believe that at some point this will be a game. So but if you come to a project very late and you have like an almost finished game and just should make like sound for stuff and everything is already set in stone, then I think it's also a bit limiting for the sound artist, and I think I also talked about this with Mark Mangini, who did the sound on Dune, that it's really important to get the audio people involved very early on to also have this open, this open field to play with, and then you can inform each other, because I always feel if you work with other departments and other arts, that it's always cool that you have some concept art that inspires you, then you make some sound or music that inspires someone else to do something, and so it's more of a collaborative effort and not nothing like just blowing through tasks at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing design to concept art. It's really nice.
Absolutely, yeah. Also great if you then can talk to people that animate stuff, because I feel like especially this is very hard for me if I have something where the animation is finished, the timing is finished, and I have to make sounds for it. And I would have an idea, but it would like take a longer amount of time or a shorter amount of time. And yeah, but everything is already set in stone, so you can't like really change anything anymore. Yeah, maybe on your long experience on working on different projects, do you have any favorite projects to work, and why was it your favorite project?
I think I'd have to think about that, because they're all kind of been super interesting.
It's also a fair answer.
Actually,
it's fine.
Sorry?
It's also a fair answer to say every project was interesting in its own way. So
Yeah.
feel free to just pick something, and we don't have to rate them.
I think game related, what I really liked working on Back4Blood, just because it was so. Just to be clear, then when I've worked on Back4Blood, I've worked as an assistant for Martin. I haven't worked with the game developers as such. Just so to be clear with that, but we had a lot of fun working on that game, because it was so like we would meet up. I remember I got a call one day like, can you do you want to come up? There was a scout like when you're a scout, then they have this small house. Yeah. And he called and said, can you come up here, because we are doing a recording session, and if you could play the guitar into an oven, that would be cool.
Very specific.
I was like, yeah, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And so we made a lot of like weird experiments with playing. I have this old crappy guitar, and I put a long spring on it for natural reverb, and then we placed transducers on baking plates in the oven and recorded stuff in the oven and threw an acoustic guitar, and it was me and Martin and another sound designer called Daniel who made that session during COVID. And I mean, it was just, you've been in isolation for so long, and then to meet up and just do crazy stuff in a day, that was really nice.
That's awesome, yeah.
So I liked working on that one, because it was so open and crazy.
Yeah, that sounds like an awesome idea. I mean,
Yeah.
if I would get that call, I would also be there like in a few minutes, because that's like, oh, amazing. Yeah, I want to hear about how that sounds and how I can make it sound even weirder.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, also then, what I also wanted to ask, because looking through your resume and all your things you're working on, you're not only working on as a sound artist on games, you also like released your own album, but you additionally are working in 2 bands.
Yeah.
So how do you balance all this work in your life?
Good question. At the moment, I have a period where I do not play in the bands, just because it's too much. So at the moment, I'm not doing that. But yeah, I feel I've done a lot of different things, and I sometimes also feel that my path and my education has been kind of a detour. And I sometimes wish that I'd had known about game audio, for instance, earlier, so that I could have had a more direct path, I guess. But recently, a friend and colleague said to me that working with game audio is kind of something you prepare for your whole life. all the weird detours you go, that's preparing for this job, I think. And that made me feel a little better. It made me feel like my whole detour has been the best education I could have got. I could have had to manage this job. So that didn't answer the question. Actually, it was just
it's fine. I mean,
what popped up in my mind.
I feel like the answer is you're just doing a lot of stuff, but you're not doing all of the time. So
yeah, exactly. I try to dose it.
Yeah. That's always interesting if you read a resume of someone and you're like, oh, what? It's like 2 bands and a record, and then like working on games, and so many games I really like, and there's like big jobs probably, and so it's interesting to see that, and it can make people feel like maybe disheartened, or like you said, like they're not on the straight path or something like that. But I have to agree with you absolutely. Like this preparation or like your unique path makes you and your sounds unique, and that's I feel that's also what the really creative people value in other people, because we don't want other people around us that had the same path and the same education. We want like a lot of variety and a lot of different ideas and different approaches to things. So just looking at your instruments, I also got ideas on my own, just looking through the photos. So it instantly gets me inspired, and I think that's important to know in life in general, that there's no set path. That's like something we've probably learned for a long time. But if you look also in history, there's a lot of people that started very, very far into their lives with something very great.
Yeah.
And it's always like a fluent thing. It's not a path. And if you haven't been on there, then this path is closed forever. You can do anything.
Yeah.
At any point.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, it's just 2 years ago I asked myself, geez, I don't know what I'm going to be when I become an adult, and I'm 47. So it's kind of, I mean, I was stressed about that as well, because it's pretty late to come in as a sound designer in games when you're past 40. But it's also been a great kind of age to do a career path, because you kind of easen up about being worried about what other people think.
Yeah.
Which is just a nice, it's just easier to go forward when it's not so serious. And that helped me a lot, like trying to come into this industry. Just like a simple thing as not being afraid of asking questions. Because that's a really good way of learning, to ask questions and get answers. I realized that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the audio community in general, at least my experience and all the people I talked to so far, is really open and like non-judgmental about those things, I feel.
Yeah.
Because it's just, we all have this weird passion for sound. And if you go into then the niche of the niche, like for example, like the Foley and field recording, then you have an even like smaller amount of people that are interested, but they are very passionate, and it doesn't matter if you're very young or very old or what your background is, because it's all just, we all know we don't know what we're doing. We're just experimenting, and and I think, I'm turning 40 next year, so I'm also in that ballpark. But Yeah, I think the thing to remember is that you just, don't grow up. That's probably the thing you have to do.
Yeah.
Because if you say, what will I be when I grow up? At some point in life, you probably find out that you never really grow up. You're just constantly growing. And that's that.
Exactly.
So.
And just keep using those methods that kids are so great at. Like
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stick to that kind of, yeah. But it's true. Like the audio the audio communities has just been amazing. The amount of help that I've gotten, and when I've reached out to people, I've always just experienced people getting back to me and being super helpful and nice and sharing knowledge, and that's just been absolutely amazing. I haven't seen that in the same way in the music industry. There are a lot more elbows going on there. So I also really felt making this transition that I have found people that has the same spark in their eyes, and which has just been great.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. So we've been talking for almost an hour now. So at this point, I don't think I have any more questions, but I really enjoyed our talk. But I just wanted to ask you for the end, do you have any shout outs, any project you want to share with us or anything upcoming?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to share everything that I'm working on at the moment, but I'm not allowed to. So
I get that answer a lot. Yeah.
And but I'm really looking forward to being able to share that. It's the 007 project.
Yeah. I'm also excited about that one, so I'll be eagerly waiting for some news about that one as well.
Yes.
Thank you again for your time. It was lovely to talk to you, and have a nice rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting on patreon.com/fieldandfoley or ko-fi.com/fieldandfoley, where you gain early access to episodes in lossless format and can submit questions for our guests. Thank you for listening.